everyone, and welcome to this session on the importance of design for a small-scale farm. My name is Robert Fraser. I'm a livestock farmer from Herefordshire in the UK and Executive Director of the Real Farming Trust, which is the charity behind this wonderful conference. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Perrine, who along with her husband Charles has been a true inspiration to me. So I wanted to start with a few words by way of introduction. To change the world, you need to tell a story which will inspire change. And what a story this is. Perrine and Charles's farm, La Ferme du Bec Hellouin, is a small piece of land in the beautiful Normandy countryside that gives me hope for the future. This hope is captured beautifully at the start of Perrine and Charles's wonderful book, Miraculous Abundance, which I urge you to read, is this book. Before starting their farm, Charles traveled the world studying indigenous peoples. In the Amazon, he came across a 10-year-old boy called Pupili. He tells of how one day Pupili invited Charles to go fishing in his tiny dugout canoe in an alarmingly fast-flowing and dangerous-looking tributary of the Amazon. Despite the strong currents, this small boy navigated the river with ease, paddling right up to the base of a powerful waterfall, where he found a vein of countercurrent, put down his paddle, and started fishing for piranha. Charles tells how this experience left an indelible mark on him, an appreciation that current always causes a countercurrent. And as the current becomes more powerful, the countercurrent likewise becomes stronger. As Charles explains, I felt an immense joy rising up in me. I had until then seen our world as a great river, powerful, strong, rapid, and terrifying. And I often found myself swept up against my will by the current, unable to resist. Modernity takes us along without asking our opinion, and no one really knows where it is going. Yet this world that is so incredibly powerful generates countercurrents, lively little veins of water that give us hope. If I learned to identify them, I realized I would not have to struggle, to exhaust myself in a losing battle. By positioning myself in the proper place, I would be able to carve out a path aligned with my heart and my dreams. There are so many little lively veins of water in this conference, and I truly hope that it marks a point of change, a point at which these countercurrents start to swell, gaining momentum and strength until eventually they spill over the riverbanks, creating a new channel and becoming the dominant force. As Victor Hugo said, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. The organic pioneer, Eliot Colman, who has had a huge influence on Perrine and Charles, and who I had the pleasure of introducing at the conference last year, describes their farm as the United Nations of all the best sustainable farming ideas. And he is right. Perrine and Charles have drawn their inspiration and knowledge from so many different sources. They incorporate the modern techniques of bio-intensive microagriculture into the broader context of permaculture, and also traditional learnings from the Parisian market gardeners and what they call their barefoot mentors. From the pioneers of natural farming in Japan who use bokashi, a concoction of various types of plant and animal waste made into a highly concentrated liquid fertilizer, to the ancient civilizations of South America, who created the highly fertile terra preta, or black earth, in the Amazonian basin, an ancient technique to build long-term fertility through the use of charcoal, which we now know as biochar. You can see all these influences in the design of their farm. From the Mandala Garden, the island garden, ponds, companion planting, bio-intensive planting, terraces, layering, the forest garden, raised beds, mulching, the use of perennial plants, and an abundance of trees. There are no straight lines. Rather, the farm is a mosaic of intermingled ecosystems. Ecologists are astounded by the diversity of life, while agronomists are equally surprised by the yield that such a small farm gives. But perhaps most importantly, the farm is a place with people at its heart, a place of generosity, sharing, and conviviality. When I visited in 2017, the first thing I heard was the sound of children playing in the beck. The next thing I noticed was its beauty and abundance, a stunning and vibrant environment shaped by human hands, and showing how human beings can be an essential and positive force for good. It's a shining example of how farms can be places of abundance, of healing, of beauty, and of harmony, and they can have an impact well beyond that of the soil under the farmer's feet. As Charles and Perrine explained in their book, we came to realize when we touch the earth, it connects us to everything that makes us human. Food, of course, but also health, landscapes, employment, the economy, the art of living together, and even what we hold most dear, our emotions, our presence in the world, and our relationship with life. Charles and Perrine conclude their book with the following powerful remarks. The industrial agriculture generated by our consumer society is a profound perversion of the farm profession. Rather than a supporter of life, it becomes a sower of death. Farmers are the first victims, and awareness is emerging within the profession. Industrial agriculture is only a reflection of our biocidal society. It kills living beings in quantities that exceed comprehension. It stinks of death. We are better equipped than ever to enter an era of respect and fulfillment of life. We just have to develop our conscience and recognize that we are nature, her very best effort perhaps, and our mission is to ensure gentleness and wisdom with all our fellow travelers. They expect only one thing from us, that we might become truly human, that we show ourselves worthy of this unique position of ours. Perrine first came to talk at the conference back in January 2018. For me and for many delegates, this turned out to be one of the standout sessions of the last 11 years. I am delighted that she has agreed to come back to the conference to talk about their farm, what has changed over the last 3 years, and the importance of design for a small-scale farm. So I'll hand over to Perrine, and she will talk for about 30 or 40 minutes, and then there will be a chance for questions at the end. So please use the Ask a Question button. If we run out of time, we will move over to Zoom for further questions and discussion. So please look out for the Zoom link in the chat. So without further ado, over to you, Perrine, and thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Robert. That was quite an introduction. Thank you so much. I don't know what to say. You almost said everything, except for the fact that today we are changing a little bit all the organization of the farm. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about this, but mainly the subject today is going to be design. So through our own adventure facing the reality of design, as you all know, in permaculture, we often use the word design, and design to me is the key to the realization, to the success of a farm, really. We didn't know nothing about design when we first started. And now we do understand after something like 15 years, no, 17 years now, that design is the key of the success, really. So I'm going to share my screen now. Hopefully the technique is going to work and the gods of techniques are going to be with us. Not yet, but should start soon. I'm going to try again. Of course, it worked perfectly when we tried earlier.
Perrine, I'm here to help you if you're stuck.
Because it wouldn't show. So.
Okay. Did you go to the share screen? But there it goes. We got it.
Okay, then we're going to get started. So yeah, I'm going to start with the design of the farm today. So the picture you're seeing on the screen now is pretty much what it looks like today. We've been doing a few changes, but still. So you see we're right in the middle of the valley in Normandy. So the climate is, let's say, just like the British climate, more or less, a little colder in winters. And because we are in the valley, it gets even colder than all the other places around. So frost is a problem in this valley. Humidity is a problem. But you'll see, because of climate change, everything is upside down and we don't know what to expect anymore. But anyway, this is a farm now. And this is the heart of the farm like Charles drew it a few years ago, where you can see several ecosystems. In fact, the farm is really a mosaic of different ecosystems that are interacting with each other. You know, we would be quite tempted to think that a design would be just a bunch of things, strategies or technologies or technique that you throw together. And then thanks to a magical trick, it's going to become something that works. In reality, design is a conscious assembly of concepts, material, techniques, strategies, whatever, but for a particular purpose. And year after year, step by step, we figure out that design was really the key to not only the biodiversity of the farm, but also the productivity of the farm. And I believe we can say, after all those years of experience, that if the farm is environmentally performant, then it's going to become economically performant. And thanks to the design, thanks to the interaction we're going to implement into the farm, things are going to work out. So that's where we started. I'm very sorry for the poor quality of the picture, but it was taken by Google in 2005. So on the top left of the picture, you can see the house, which was not a farm before. Nothing used to be a farm where we are. It was just a house, a thatch roof house, with a pasture, a big pasture, and a river crossing the farm in two parts. What we've done in 2005 was to first plant trees and second create ponds, because we had the intuition, even though we knew nothing about permaculture, we were not seriously thinking about farming, we knew that we had to invite nature into that little bit of valley again, because the valley was used for cow grazing, and there were hardly any bushes, any hedges, any trees left, as you can see on the picture. And a few years later, that's what it became. This is the main heart of the farm. The farm in reality is 20 hectares wide. The main heart of the farm that we see here on the picture is 1.3 hectares, and we've got a different part on the right side of the screen. But see, this thing you're seeing on the screen, it used to be like our neighbors, which means completely dry pastures, overgrazed by cows. So there was nothing, no trees, no water, not even grass, in summer, in full summer, like on this picture, there was nothing left. And because we've planted trees, because we've digged ponds, because we've invited all the birds, all the insects that can survive and thrive actually in the valley, it worked. And you can clearly see that in full summer, everything on our farm is still completely green. Everything at the neighbors is completely burnt. So the farm really started in 2006. In 2003, we arrived in Normandy, but our goal at the time was just to be self-sufficient. It was really a family project, just to make sure that we wouldn't go to supermarkets anymore and we wouldn't depend on food and products that were not coming out from industries. And we wanted something the most natural possible. So 20 hectares at the heart of the valley. From day one, we were organic certified. There was no question about that. And since 2008, our main source of inspiration is permaculture. So you do understand that we've created the farm in 2006, but found out about permaculture only 2 years later. But our previous source of inspiration were the painters, not British, I was about to say British, but this one is from Brittany. It's called Puedras, and he shows edible sceneries like they used to have in France in the 50s, so not so long ago, where all the organization of the community was based around trees, around edges, around whatever would provide a living there for food. And we love those paintings, and we were very much inspired by those. And somehow we've been trying to revive those type of sceneries on the farm. But again, at that time, we knew nothing about permaculture and certainly nothing about design. And that's where we started. See, that's Winnick, our first horse. And he's grazing on a pasture. On this picture, you can see trees, though. We've already planted some trees. And to us, that's what we started with, planting trees. And today, if you ask us what the priority is on the farm, we're going to keep answering planting trees. Even though we don't have any more space left, we still want to plant trees because we believe that trees are the key to so many things. You know, they capture carbon. Thanks to them, you have a lot of biodiversity. It feeds the animals. It may eventually feed the humans. It can heal the humans. Trees are really the pillars of the farm. And when we started with a steppy agriculture with horse-drawn tools. And thanks to that, we managed to work the soil. We started with quite a good soil, but not very sound. In the best places, we have something like 20 centimeters soil, which is very, very few, especially for vegetables. So when we started, again, we knew nothing about permaculture, so we started very conventionally with straight lines, vegetables on those straight lines. Everything was done with the horse, and it was okay, I have to say. Yields were okay, but we were still beginners, and we were often technically challenged by many things, especially slugs. It might seem ridiculous, but when you start from a pasture, fighting against slugs, even though in a permaculture design, you don't struggle against anybody. There's no war. It's just your job is to keep a balance, in fact, in the ecosystem. So we were learning how to grow food, but also we were feeling like a piece of the puzzle was lacking, you know? Yes, we were able to produce something. There was a yield at the end of the day, but there was something missing. Still, we understood without knowing about permaculture that there was one important thing that we were supposed to do. It was to manage water. And I would say, if you're a beginner or if you want to start farming or you want to modify your farm now according to permaculture principles, the very first thing you have to address is water management. To me, water and energy will be the key to food production, all type of foods actually, in the coming years. So first thing before all is how to manage the water. In our valley, we have a lot of water, but it is on the ground. Still, we have to manage it. We have to make sure that all the water that is accessible to the rooting system of the trees or the vegetables is accessible somewhere, and it is collected somewhere in ponds, in street with the stream that crosses the farm. That's very natural, but also with permaculture, you draw a lot along the key lines. Some baissière in France. The word in English is not coming, but it's going to come from swells. That's it. You draw some swells, and you're going to keep the water from running away. In permaculture, one of the basic thing you want to do with water is that every single drop of water that's going to come in the system, either it comes from rain, either it comes from the roof, or whatever it comes from, you want to keep it as long as possible in the system. So water, either you are in Africa or here in France, in Normandy, is the key to a good design. So on top of collecting water, also a tool to collect water and to address proper water management is, again, trees. Because thanks to the rooting systems of the trees, not only you're going to collect some water, of course, you're going to harvest some water from the atmosphere, but also you're going to spread and distribute the water to all the other elements that are planted close to the trees. So digging ponds, creating swells, and planting trees were one of the toughest work of the very beginning. But again, today it's paying back because it's been very successful. And then when it comes to vegetable production, properly speaking, we, of course, when we found out about permaculture, we first started with raised beds. We thought that raised beds were the key to permaculture, the best tool ever. But we didn't know, we didn't understand yet that the raised beds and all the other techniques like agroforestry, like working with horsepower, like permanent flatbeds or whatsoever, were just techniques that you would implement into a permaculture frame, into a good design. No technique is good if you don't have a proper design, if you don't have a proper way of collecting water, managing water, a proper way of having the best fuel you can get in nature, which is the sun. You have to be self-sustainable in terms of sun. And even though you can use a lot of energy to create your design, you have to make sure that in the lifetime of the design, you're going to store or conserve more energy than the one you use to construct or to maintain the system. And when we first started creating the Mandala Garden, we were like, wow, those raised beds, they are going to be terrible. They are going to be so productive. We're going to have so much yield. And we were right somehow. See, this picture is the very next spring, right after we've created them. And this is one summer. See how productive and how abundant it's been. But we were beginners again at that time, and we didn't really understood how things would work together, how things would interact all together. And when we started using this design, this Mandala Garden design, with all those circles, we found it especially efficient, but not very practical because, on harvest day, when you have to go from one raised bed to another all along the circle, you waste a lot of time. So in 2013, we've decided to change the mandala design to make it more accessible, more practical to us professional farmers. So from the left of the screen, you can see the entrance on the mandala, and then you're going to go up until the center of the mandala. And if you have the image properly on your screen now, you're going to see that the center of the mandala is nothing else but the sun. And this design, we have copied it. We were not the inventors of this design. This design has been found in so many traditions, with the Aztec, with the Maya. They were all into this sunlight design because right in the middle of the sun, when you stand there, you have an overview of whatever's going on in all the sun rays, which means I can only on a daily basis go into the Mandala Garden, just stand in the middle and know if the vegetables on this raised bed were eaten by slugs overnight or not. See how practical this is. So design is something very interesting you're going to create at first when you start the farm, but you have to keep in mind that a design is never finished. It will always evolve with you, human beings, and your technical evolutions, your technical progress, and also with all the analysis, all the observation and analysis you're going to make along the way. So it is not frustrating to say, well, I have drawn a very nice design on my piece of paper on day one, and then year after year, I realized that I'm supposed to change everything. No, if you did think your design properly, you're not going to change everything year after year, but you're going to adapt. So you've got to make sure when you first design the farm that it's going to be easy to adapt, that every single year you shall not destroy, rebuild again and again and again, because this is highly frustrating. And this is a lot of energy also involved in those changes. So you have to make sure that just like in Mother Nature, just like in natural ecosystem, everything can, if not change completely, at least move a little bit to adapt. Remember, we're talking about interaction between the elements. In nature, we talk about wills, all those plants that will interact with each other. So it is very important to make sure that your design is going to fit your needs as a professional, but it's going to fit also the needs in terms of biodiversity, in terms of windbreak, in terms of sun penetration into the system. And you see here in this Mandala Garden, we've made the choice to have it surrounded by trees. There are hardly any trees in the middle of the mandala because we are in Normandy and we want to have as much sun as possible. But it is possible to have the trees right in the middle of the mandala because you're gonna get more shadow in summer. And you know, with climate change, we know where we're starting from, but we don't know what's going to happen yet. We know that there will be a rise in temperature, but this rise of temperature may not be very stable. So we don't know what's going to happen. So we know we're going to have more and more very sudden and somehow violent climate events, like drought, like floods, etc. So we have to get prepared, but it's very difficult to really adapt today to climate change, especially in terms of species, because people say, well, if the temperature are going to rise, let's plant mango trees in the Bec Hellouin in Normandy. I would be happy. I love mangoes, but unfortunately, it's not that easy. So at the moment, we have to adapt to that also. So our design may change in the coming years because of climate change. So we've created also an island garden because we were very much inspired by all those people who work with water, who have production in between ponds or in between water collection area. This is very good because the sun reflects onto the water captures the heat, everything is beneficial, and you also can have water coming under the soil by capillarity. And everything is good in that scenery. So see, that was 2008, and 1 year after, that's what it became, very green. And we were very surprised actually by the speed of the growth of all the trees, all the vegetables we've planted. So of course, for the vegetables, it's normal because it is annual, but even the trees, we were very surprised because again, we have a lot of water underground and it might be a problem sometimes. But here, the trees, I mean, they are thrilling. They were really okay, which means somehow we did a good job in terms of water collection, because otherwise some of our trees might have had the rooting system in the water at some points of the year. This is the island garden again, and the oldest forest garden in the background. And every single element of the system is a resource. So when the pond hasn't any more water, we do collect all the matter we can, and we export it and we put it on the raised beds. This is the island again. So see the abundance, see the different type of colors, see the different layers. We use stacking a lot to have our best fuel possible, which is the sun. The island again and again in winter, so that we can appreciate the design of this island. And it's facing full sun, so this is the best part of the sun of the farm, except for the greenhouses. This is a place where we harvest most and the fastest vegetables in the year, because it is very much protected from the wind by the forest garden that we can see on the right. It is facing south again, so it gets full sun. It's very warm. It gets enough water for everybody growing in there. So it's really a perfect microclimate, completely created from scratch thanks to the design. And in 2008, we started creating maybe our favorite tool into the permaculture box, which is the forest garden. Because again, everything to us is running around trees, and trees are the pillars of the system because they capture carbon, they provide shadow, they provide organic matter, they provide shelter from the sun, if necessary, shelter from strong winds. They harmonize the water dispatch either under the soil or over the soil. So really, they are a very key ingredient to the ecosystem. This is how the forest garden turned into after a few years only. So the first forest garden we've created was 1,000 square meters. And it is one of the biggest we have on the farm, because now we've got 4 forest gardens. We love it so much. We love this concept so much. Another part of the farm that we've completely redesigned when we first came in, I'm pretty short, so I couldn't even get into this very big slope facing the village of Le Bec Hellouin, because it was so full of bushes, trees, nettles. And again, at first, do not hesitate to use energy. See, we had no other solution but to work with a tractor on the slope. Even with horses, it would have been too difficult. So we invested a lot of energy to create the design at first. Of course, again, we've planted a lot of trees, and on this big slope, we have a conservatory orchard, but mostly we manage water, especially on a slope. It is key to collect, to harvest the water, and to leave it, let it sit into the soil. Unfortunately, in our soil, we have no clay, almost no clay. So we had to build concrete ponds in some parts, but in some other parts, we've managed to manage them with the soil without any concrete addition. And then we've created terraces, because it's so difficult, physically speaking, to work on a slope. Terraces that welcome raised beds. See the nice scenery, and sometimes people wonder why we wanted to become farmers. That picture is the explanation. Beautiful view, the animal, the trees, beautiful colors, that's life. And this is the design of the slope now. So from the bottom of your screen, this is the top of the hill of the slope. And then we go down and see, you can figure out how the terraces work, how the swales work, how the different ponds here and there work, and how the animal can circulate in this design. Working with animals is really interesting. Either you've already designed something or you haven't done anything. When we designed one big system in the farm that used to be a big pasture, for the first 2 years, we didn't have time to design anything at all. So we left the animals on the pasture. We had our donkey, our horses, and the sheep. And someday somebody came and took a drone picture. It was amazingly smart how the animals would circulate on that piece of land. And when we designed that piece of land, we completely respected the way the animals were circulating. Because in terms of energy, in terms of practicability of the soil, of the land, the animals know better than we do. So we did trust them in terms of circulation. And then we've created a mini forest garden. This is the initial design, and this is how it goes when we started creating it. This was winter, obviously. And then we mulched everything, planted all the shrubs, all the trees. We tried different types of cover for the soil. So either manure or linen or wool, sheep wool also we've tried. And we wanted to make sure that all the trees, all the bushes we've planted would have enough time to grow by the time the pioneers, all the dandelions, nettles, comfrey, etc., would come and invade them. And see, that's how it worked. That's the very first summer after plantation. Can you imagine how strong, how abundant it been? And this is another piece of land, the one I was telling you about, the one where we've observed the circulation of the animals. And this is what we call the edible scenery. So if you do remember On the right part of the screen, you've got the main heart of the farm. We can see the Mandala Garden. We can see the greenhouses. And then I'm talking about the part on the left of the screen. It was a 2.5 hectares pasture that we took over. And we've planted many trees. It remained a pasture because still our sheep, our horses are still grazing under there. But again, we've managed all the circulation, we've managed water. The soil here is not very profound, so we've been struggling growing vegetables in there. In some places we can, in other one we cannot, therefore we've planted trees. But see how the design was adapted to the reality of the soil and this plot of land. That's what it was like when we first started. You can see how the animals are circulating on this picture. You can see the avenues, almost the avenues that they've created. On the right part, you've got a little plot of land that we've started to work on day one. So we were harvesting some vegetables already in there. But the other side, we didn't have time yet to design it and to plant. That's what it looked like before. And then we've planted, of course. Again, design of the plantation. And that picture was taken during the first lockdown, so this spring, with all the trees really growing well now, flowering. We've already had fruits, quite a lot of fruits from those trees, and see how the sheep are happy because they not only they do have the grass, they can eat all the shrubs on the edges. And they can also collect the fruits falling from the trees. Same place again with those big trees. So as a conclusion, I can say that the farm became an agro-silvopastoral intensive system, but intense in terms of biodiversity, but also intense with high yields at every single step. Either you have a look at the trees, or you have a look at the vegetables, everything is pretty abundant, even though, again, we were starting with the soil that was not meant to be worked for vegetables at first. And for trees also, it was pretty difficult. Again, if we hadn't managed this water problem, we would have never been able to have trees flourishing in this system. So just like in nature, every single element, as you know, in permaculture, renders several functions, and every single important function is fulfilled by several elements. And to me, that's the key principle of permaculture that we've been using, and that's the one that shall guide you for design conception. Of course, again, the biodiversity became just maybe like it used to be. We've seen frogs coming again. We've seen bees, a lot of flowers that we've planted and some other grown by themselves. And somehow, at some point, you manage to create a balance between the interaction that you've inserted into the system and the one that Mother Nature is going to do by itself. This is the smallest hedgehog I adopted on the farm, because the farm is a place where we release hedgehogs once they are safe, because people tend to bring us injured ones or little ones whose mother has been killed by cars mostly. And patterns, also something I forgot to mention, that your design shall start from the patterns and then go step by step very much into detail. But at first, you really have to understand what an ecosystem is, and you shall have the big picture. If you want permaculture to offer holistic design tools, then you shall understand what nature provides and how it works. That's a key also. And of course, the trees, again, I started with the trees, I will finish with the trees. Agroforestry is a big part of the key of the production of the system now. everything is organized around trees, around hedges, around ponds. And thanks to this evolving design, again, a design shall not be finished by day one, it shall be evolving. We grow crops between trees, and we therefore have many positive externality. So I've been a bit long. I told Robert we would have time for questions. I'm sorry, but there are so many things that shall be said. But mainly, we should say that thanks to a very good design, whatever you do, whatever the techniques you use, for sure, nature is going to provide, because you're going to create a framework that will enable you to get a very important yield, and to make sure that your system is going to be resilient and long lasting. And I think I'm done with the first part, Robert. This is our book, Miraculous Abundance, the only one that's been translated into English at this point. Another one that we've been working very hard on has been released in French. It's called Vivre avec la Terre. It's more than 1,000 pages around what we've been doing, experiencing, and understanding for those past 15 years. It shall be translated into English very soon, but we don't know yet. So we'll keep you posted on that. But that's it, I think, for the moment. I will be happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Perrine. What an inspirational and beautiful talk, as always. And I feel very honored to have actually visited your farm to see it in the flesh, so to speak, because it blew my mind. And I'm guessing a lot of those design ideas are actually set out in your book, Living with the Earth, which will be translated hopefully very shortly and available to buy. 3 volumes, 1,000 pages, as you say. So I'm guessing that's a lot of the design content is in there.
Yeah, many information about design, a lot of technical questions also, everything we've been doing basically. So yeah, I really hope it's going to be released in English very soon. But as far as I know, translation has just started, so we might have to wait for another few months.
Well, that's good. Not years then. We've got lots of questions coming in, and if we don't get to cover them all, we'll open up a Zoom room as well. So we'll see how we get on. But I had one first, Perrine, if that's all right. If you could just say a little bit more about the role of livestock and animals in your farm.
It is major. Actually, people always tend to say with the vegan movement that farming without animals shall be the norm. To us, farming around trees and animals is also a key. I mentioned the trees, but to us, we are coming back to the roots of agriculture, of agronomy. And livestock is the key to the equilibrium of the system. I mean, it's completely obvious. Either you talk about chicken or sheep, or we don't have cows, but the neighbors do. But it really is the key to the system. And to us, it does make sense, because not only it is logical in terms of agronomy, but also it is logical for human beings. I mean, somehow we are at the top of the food chain. So we don't want to hide ourselves and say, oh no, we're not going to work, or we're not going to eat animals. We do want to do it with 100% respect. And we love our animals. We do it the best way possible. We make sure they are as healthy as possible, but we do really work with them.
Yes, and I remember when I visited 3 years ago, you'd rescued one of a little duckling, I think it was. But there are lots of ducks on the river and the ponds to help with slug control. I won't ask if it survived, but nice to see hedgehogs being released as well, because they all play their role.
Yeah.
Talking about trees, then there's a couple of questions that have come in about trees. One was, do you grow your own trees and other crops from your own seed, or do you buy them into the farm?
When we first started, we were kind of feeling an emergency, you know. There was a feeling like, wow, we have to plant now, because the planet is not in a good shape, and with climate change, we have to plant as many trees as possible. So we decided at first to buy trees. And actually, the very first trees we bought for the fruit forest, because we planted other trees before, but the very first trees came from Martin Crawford. So we are so happy to read his book about forest garden. And but Martin is a god to us, is the god of the forest garden. And we decided again in the years after that we wanted to buy them grown enough. We don't have enough space to have a place where we're going to grow our own trees. We do it for shrubs and stuff. That's easy. But for the big trees, we tend to buy them. But it's good to work with people also who do a very, very good job at it. And it's also very difficult in our soil to find the proper crops and the proper species and varieties. So we're happy to work with professionals on that. If I was to do it again now, I would do everything by myself, because I would start at 20 years old and I would grow my own trees and make sure everything is okay. I would have loved that. But again, we had this feeling of emergency. We still kind of have it. Maybe I have it less than Charles does, but we still feel like it's really urgent to plant.
Yeah. Okay. And somebody's asked this question. Actually, it would be really interesting to me, because we want to try and develop an agro-silver pastoral system here on our livestock farm. And we've always worried about tree protection. So can you say a little bit about how you protected your trees and what with?
You might have seen it on the pictures. We've got, I have no idea how to say it in English, so you have to help me on this one, Robert. We've got those metallic corset, maybe. And you have to make sure that when you want mixed pasture, which is the case with us, with the sheep and the horses, that would be the same with cows. So you have to make sure that they won't go to have access to the bark, but also to the branches on top, especially with horses. So it's pretty difficult to see all those costs. So we've tried many things. We've tried the metallic ones, and we've tried the corals. Is it correct? Do you say corals in English? With a wooden fence. Yeah. And the coral are good for guilds, excellent for guilds. But the metallic ones are more protective, and you lose less grass. But considering the fact that the grass is gonna slow down the growth of the trees, I'm not too sure yet which one is the good. If you find the good guild, I would go to the coral, but you're gonna have less grass for the livestock. That's it. Okay.
All right. Lots of people in the audience, and I know this is set out a little bit in your first book, Miraculous Abundance. Is how many people do you employ, or did you employ, or and how many? Can you give any figures on how many families or people you managed to feed from the farm?
So at first the farm was 20 hectares wide, but it's still 20 hectares wide. On those 20 hectares, we've got 12.5 hectares of woods. So we don't grow anything obviously in those woods except for wood. But at some point, so we first started just Charles and myself, who were the creators of the farm, and it was just two of us for a few years. And then we've hired people. At some point on the farm, thanks also to the research programs and the school, because we've created a school where we provide training sessions, at some point we had a 15 people team. But now, it's been a few years now since we've wanted to go the other way around. We wanted to find, to reseek the DNA of the start, and all the people who came to work on our farm, at some point they went to create their own farms. So we were very happy about that. We've got a lot of baby farms here and there, a lot of marriages also, because when they come to the farm, usually they fell in love with each other. And so they all left, which is good. We are very happy about that. And now it's, again, since the beginning of this month, just Charles and myself. And we're very happy because we want the farm now to go very frankly to the resilience side. We want to show that a very small farm like ours, with just two people, the two farmers, not so young farmers, but farmers, can manage to provide enough food for the village. The village is 400 inhabitants. At the best of the farm, only with 2 people in charge of vegetables, we've managed to feed 100 families. So I don't know how can things evaluate in the future, but what I know is that in the coming years, I'm very interested in showing that small scale farms here and there can manage to provide enough food for the community. And after the first lockdown in France, things were crazy because during lockdown, actually, for the very first week, people were queuing at the supermarket because they were very anxious. They didn't know where to get food. After this, they said, "Oh, we have local producers. We're going to go and see them." But all the markets, the outdoor markets were closed. So the producers could not sell their products. We had made the choice from day one to sell at the farm shop, which was a challenge, a real bet, but it worked for us. So we had no problem with that. But all the colleagues who could not sell their food anymore were really, really, really struggling. And then we realized how crazy the system was. So you had producers with a lot of products on hand who could not sell it, consumers who could not find the products. You had some regions in France where producers could not sow their seeds because they couldn't ask for the Romanian or people from Poland to come and work for them. You had all those fishermen in the Atlantic who were fishing, but since the logistic system to bring those products to Paris was completely ruined, they couldn't sell either. And we were like, wow, and this is just a small sanitary crisis. What's going to happen tomorrow if we have an economical crisis, etc., etc.? We are not resilient at all, not self-sufficient. So I would like to work in the coming years in a scheme where I would tell the politics, see, you've got a 2,000 inhabitant city, little city. How many farms do you need and what type of productions do you need locally to feed your own people? And I'm really eager to work on that because I do believe that at the moment we are all very fragile, especially in France, but I would say even you in England because of Brexit is going to get worse and worse. So we really have to think about this sovereignty when it comes to food production.
That's fascinating. It's going to be fascinating research, that, and hopefully you'll come back in a few years' time and tell us what the findings of that research is. A couple more questions while we have time in Crowdcast, and I think we'll just spill over into a Zoom room if that's all right, just to tidy up a few of the other questions. One question was, what mulch do you prefer in your forest gardens for the management of weeds?
I would say that if we had enough, we would have used only shredded wood. Huge amounts of shredded wood, big volumes of this matter. But to me, this is the best one you can have for the trees. It is, in fact, a very high carbon compost somehow. But when we first started, especially for the mini forest garden, we used several products. Straw, of course. Straw is good. We used it in the very first forest garden, but not enough to fight the indigenous cover crops. So it was good and bad at the same time. It really depends if you have enough time to manage this layer in your forest garden. We don't have time, obviously, because we are very much busy because of the vegetables growing. So it was tough for us to take care of this thing at first. So straw was not enough. So to me, shredded wood, again, is the best. You could use also plastic. I mean, Martin Crawford does it for a few years. I mean, he's got plastic sheets all over. And then it's pretty good. But it really depends on how you want to work, if you want to plant your cover crop from day one or not, which I would recommend. I would recommend to plant everything at the same time. Even though it is difficult. It's not difficult to plant big trees. It's not so difficult to plant shrubs, but it's very difficult to plant and most certainly to maintain a good cover crop on this layer. So I would go with shredded wood.
Okay, thank you very much. And Yes, I mean, people who don't know Martin Crawford, I would urge you to look him up. He's the Agroforestry Research Trust down at the Dartington Estate in the southwest of England, and he's a sort of pioneer of forest gardening, isn't he? And I want a place to visit when restrictions allow. I would also urge you to visit him as well. So a question about the ponds. How did you practically create your island garden? Is it very similar to the Chinampas system used in Central America? Do you have any resources on these for other temperate climates?
I love the Chinampas system, but no, we just dig ponds, and basically the remaining soil was left here to be used as a place to grow crops. We added compost, and then all the matter that we've collected from the ponds was used to make raised beds here and there, or to add a little soil to the island, because as you understood, we are not very rich in terms of soil. So we are very happy every single time we can find either compost or proper soil. So it's not a real Chinampas, because the island is really built on the soil. I mean, we didn't touch this part. We just dig ponds and streams around it.
Okay, great. I'm just looking through all the questions. I'm not sure if we have time. Maybe we'll have time. It's quite a long question. Given that the farming business is challenging at the best of times, and a small farm even more so, when you're seeking land to buy or to rent, how should we prioritize and weight its qualities, such as its soil type, its depth, its aspect, its slope, availability and consistency of water supply, and access to markets? Do you behave like the tortoise who waits for the appropriate site and will be rewarded in the long run, or do you act like a hare who buys the first available plot that is available to you?
That's a very good question, and I have it many times, because most of the time when I've got young project holders coming to me, I try to help and answer this question. I would say that without any other consideration, you shall be really obsessed by water. Water. That's the key. That's the first thing you shall consider. Then energy. What do I mean by energy? How are you gonna create the energy? How dependent are you gonna be on energy? Why am I talking about water and energy as the first 2 points? Because it doesn't seem obvious in agriculture, but still, for me, with what we're going to be facing very soon, there are going to be the key to the ability of keeping on producing food. So water and energy. And then you're going to consider the other limits. So it depends on who you are, and it depends on how you want to live. Are you going to find a farm that's not too far from your favorite school for your kids? Is your wife or husband will be commuting to the next city to keep a job of its own that he's loving or that pays well? What are your priorities? Do you want to live in the countryside, or do you want to live nearby medium range city or big city because you want to go to the theater, you want to keep on going to the movie, etc. You want to be close to your customers, because we know that logistics, again, is a key, and it's difficult to commute, especially when you are a farmer. You don't have much time, and still you have to sell. So how are you going to sell, etc.? So to me, for all those reasons, the best way to set and create a farm now is to create it together, few farmers together. Everyone is the owner of his own paradise and responsible for its own mistakes and own results. But we share. We share part of the workload. We share a part of the expenses. We share the shop, for instance, the farm shop. We share maybe the accounting fees, etc., etc. And I do believe this is key to it. So, see, there are so many elements that one shall consider before starting the project. So I would go first with water and energy, and then it really is a very specific and personal design depending on what your means and goals are. And in Vivre avec la Terre, which hasn't been translated yet, and I'm so sorry about that, we've created a 3 pages questionnaire about design. All the good questions you shall ask yourself, and the team shall ask itself before you start, before even you go and get some land.
Fascinating. Thank you very much. Well, we're out of time, Perrine, and I just wanted to say a huge thank you for coming back to the conference to talk to us again. It's always such an inspiration to hear you and see your beautiful pictures of your amazing farm, and for your words of wisdom. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us. There are quite a few unanswered questions, and I'm sure people will have a few follow-up questions. So we'll just nip over to the Zoom room now, if that's been posted in the chat, and we look forward to seeing you there. But thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, everybody. I hope to see you soon.